Chapter 1. Love. Thunder crashed loudly, and lightning shot through the sky, as rain from dark storm clouds hovering over Canterlot covered the city, forcing ponies to hide within their homes and seek safety. It was particularly a horrible storm this chilly night, and it showed no signs of stopping, or even slowing down a little. Either the Pegasi were having issues with controlling the weather, or this was supposed to happen. No pony knew for sure. Screams of terror soon answered them, though, as the streets of Canterlot began to flood, picking up fences, pools, and even helpless ponies who were trying to get inside. This was clearly not intended. The princesses would have to answer soon, as well as to their helpless subjects. They had a slight advantage from where the castle stood, considering it was a bit higher up from the actual city, but it still remained in the same area. It would as well flood if they waited too long to assist. Princess Luna had seemed to have made that urgent, considering she was already gone while Princess Celstia prepared herself, staring out at the violent waters enveloping the city.
Utter madness. Chaos.
Celstia said silently to herself, turning her attention out to the castle gardens. The plants would definitely be overwatered at this point, but that was the least of her worries. She had her attention on the hedges over where many statues stood, holding much history of the past. Her eye specifically fell on the most unique one of all, Discord, the Lord of Chaos and Spirit of Disharmony. Even in these circumstances, he remained in the same position, laughing at almost what seemed to no one but himself. Celstia knew exactly why he remained that way forever.
You love this, don't you? If you were free, you'd be laughing at the I'll struggle and perish. As if you weren't cruel already.
Her eyes blazed with fury at the statue in the distance, as if she was angry with some stranger injuring her children. The ponies were basically her children anyways. It was her duty to protect them. She would not let that terrible creature ever harm them again. And then she took a deep breath. She was getting a little too angry. Now was not the time to be angry at past things that had been done. She had to focus on the present now and focus on using her powers to restore Canterlot, not be bitter with a creature of chaos who was harmless and encased in stone. She trotted over to the exit of the throne room, quietly opening it for herself and pausing, allowing herself one last look at that vile monster.
It would be horrible to think you would be able to love any pony other than yourself. You have no love in your heart to give and be given.
Her eyes narrowed on the statue, waiting for him to, for some reason, give her a dumb response back, but of course, nothing. She shook her head and exited the throne room, shutting the door behind her. Meanwhile, a lightning strike struck not too far from the castle gardens, letting out a loud crash sound. When it came the shriek of a baby and loud crying from what sounded like to be in the area of the tall hedges. The storm continued on as the baby continuously cried, seeming to be frightened of the storm when it suddenly stopped. A baby yellow Pegasus, with a long pink mane, suddenly emerged from the hedges, in a small cradle being levitated by some foreign magic that seemed to have come from nowhere. The young one was staring down at the sparkly magic enveloping her cradle, as it carried her away from the lonely hedges and somewhere else she hadn't seen before in her short lifespan. The young one sucked on her hoof as if she was soon face to face with the large hybrid creature whom was in stone. Her cradle was suddenly gently dropped beside him, allowing her the ability to look up at him and be curious of his strange appearance. The little Pegasus stopped sucking her hoof and reached her hooves out to him, making small baby babbling noises as if he might respond to her back.
You poor thing, left out in such a terrible storm to fend for yourself. How awful.
A disembodied voice spoke calmly all around her, sort of putting her at ease. The little one seemed happy to hear him speak back to her, babbling back to him in her own baby language.
I love to see pony struggle and try for impossible things, but somehow I can pity you, dear.
The small one felt something touch her face and stroke her cheek, making her smile a bit and lean into the touch. She felt there was something physically there, but she couldn't see it. It felt like a warm paw of a kitty cat, soft, warm, calming. She let out a small sigh, closing her eyes, letting herself lean into the touch of the invisible paw.
I can't believe I'm doing this. Am I really doing this? Caring for one of them? Caring for the kind that put me in stone in the first place?
The voice spoke to itself, sighing.
Fine. I'll provide you shelter, but only just this once. I can't do much from here, but I can try.
The young one felt the warm paw leave her face as she opened her eyes. She reached out for it with her little hoof, trying to grab it again to put it back on her face, but she couldn't seem to find it again. She whimpered a little when suddenly a small umbrella poofed out of nowhere and softly levitated over her cradle. The rain immediately stopped falling on her, as the small patter of rain was heard on the umbrella instead.
There you go. I am assuming you don't want to sleep in a puddle, although you might already be.
There was another poof as the soaking wet blankets the young one was lying in were changed out with dry warm ones that felt like they almost hugged her.
All right, that should be good. I've already done enough for you as it is. You better be grateful because I'm never doing this again.
And with that, the voice was gone. The young one seemed to be confused, though, to not hear the voice anymore, and she searched the stormy sky with her little eyes, and then the statue, waiting to hear from it again. Did it leave? Why would it leave her alone? She already got left behind. Why would another pony leave her? She started to cry again, a loud rumble of thunder sounding soon after she started again.
All right, what is it now? Seriously, I invite you here to stay with me, and you won't even shut up. Stone Draconiquas have to sleep too, you know.
Her crying immediately stopped upon hearing the voice again, and she giggled a bit, reaching her hooves up to the sky.
What do you want?
The voice sighed as the Pegasus was enveloped in the strange aura again and lifted into the air. The strange magic tingled on her tiny body and put little sparkles on her as she giggled, being lifted up to the statue's face.
There, happy now?
The Pegasus suddenly reached forwards for his face, holding it with her small hoofs and smiling.
Hey, stop that. I can still feel that, you know.
She fluttered her tiny wings as she pulled herself up onto his face, climbing up and using his eyebrows as stepping stones. She pulled herself up onto his head, gripping his large antlers. She then proceeded to curl up on the top of his head and yawn, resting her head on her hooves and closing her eyes.
Seriously? On my head?
But even though the voice seemed annoyed, a blanket was levitated from her cradle and lied on top of her, along with a small pillow underneath her head. A spell seemed to have been casted on her as well that made a small force field, preventing the rain from getting on her. That night seemed to just drift away, as the sounds of thunder and the flashes of lightning did so with it.
A search party? For one foal who's already been dead? They'll never find her at this rate. That storm was way too strong for her to survive it. It doesn't matter, Luna. If there's still a chance of her being alive, I'm taking it. As princesses, it's our duty to protect them and protect the innocent and the weak.
The little one opened her eyes as she yawned softly, looking ahead to see two large alicorns trotting through the nearby gardens, which seemed rather flooded with water from last night, with a few flowers tossed everywhere and a few fully grown carrots and turnips. On the bright side, it was no longer storming, and a warm sun shined on the statue and the little pony. The little foal moved a little backwards on the statue's head, trying to hide behind its antlers so she wasn't very visible, as she watched the two princesses.
Waste our time chasing after someone who's already dead? Ridiculous,
the one named Luna said.
You don't know that. Anyone who has any logic of a deadly storm knows she's dead. The only one who doesn't know is obviously you.
The darker alicorn stomped off back into the castle. The lighter alicorn, presuming to be Princess Celstia, lowered her head and folded her ears. She stayed there for a moment, just staring at the ground. She seemed to be lost in thought and rather sad. Why was that?
I don't know what's gone into you, Luna. But it has to end somewhere. Our relationship has already strained itself enough. I'm worried for you. I wish you would talk to me about what's on your mind, so we can resolve whatever this is.
Celstia raised her head again, small tears starting to form in her eyes as she looked ahead into the distance. She turned away and trotted back into the castle herself.